Sunday dinners used to mean something different when I was a kid. Now, they were more of a ritualized reminder that I didn't quite belong, still wearing the same old role they dressed me in since I was 17. I sat at the far end of the table, my place unofficially assigned over the years. I wasn't married, no kids, no real stories to bring to the table that anyone cared to hear. My oldest brother, Greg, was talking about a new boat. His wife chimed in about their lake house renovations. Across from me, my sister Donna passed around pictures of her grandkids. Everyone cooed and complimented. Then there was me, sipping iced tea too fast just to have something to do with my hands. "Still working that contract job?" Greg asked, raising an eyebrow without looking directly at me. Before I could answer, Dad chuckled low. "You'll never get it together, will you?" The room went quiet for a second, not long, just enough for the sting to settle in my chest like ice water. I laughed it off. Said something I can't remember. My hand went to grab my glass, and it slipped. Water pooled on the tablecloth. Mom handed me a napkin with that same old tired look that said, "Why are you always like this?" I dabbed at the spill like it was my life bleeding out. Was I really the family mistake? After dinner, the conversation shifted. Greg pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. "Dad's been working on his estate stuff," he said. "Just logistics." I didn't know what was in it, but I knew it wasn't for me. They'd all seen it. Probably even had conversations I wasn't invited to. Donna leaned over to her husband, whispering something. Greg smiled. "Not like you'd manage money anyway," he said loudly enough for the room to hear. No one corrected him. Not even Mom. She just looked down at her hands, silent. And that silence hurt more than anything they said out loud. I sat there, holding my breath, my face fixed in a half-smile. Not because I was okay, but because I'd learned to perform being okay. This wasn't about one dinner. This was the echo of every family gathering where I was the background noise. Where being left out was as expected as the mashed potatoes on the table. I stayed to clean up after dinner, like always. Not because they asked, but because it was the only time I felt useful. I stacked plates, scraped leftovers, and watched them drift out of the house in small clumps, laughing at jokes I wasn't part of. I remembered Christmas when I was 9, wrapping presents for everyone, only to find my name missing from under the tree. High school graduation, waiting for flowers that never came. Donna got a framed photo from her ceremony. I got a ride home. You get used to silence when no one listens. That's what I told myself as I rinsed dishes under warm water, the only warmth left in the house. I didn't cry. I just drove home. Took the long way, past the old bike path I used to ride when I needed to escape. It was late spring, and the air was thick with that southern humidity that never lets you breathe all the way in. I pulled over by the field where I once fell off my bike and split my lip. I was 11. No one came looking for me that day either. Why am I still trying to fit in? I asked the empty car. At home, I dug out the photo Mom gave me last year. A family portrait from 2 decades ago. Everyone smiling. Except me. I was in the corner, barely visible. I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash without flinching. You teach people how to treat you, my old therapist used to say. I never really believed her. Until now. I opened my bottom drawer and pulled out an old journal. One page caught my eye. It was from a rough night, maybe 10 years ago. It said, "I deserve to exist fully." I sat there staring at those words like they were from someone I hadn't met yet. Later that night, while sipping coffee alone, an email popped up. Subject: "We miss you at the firm." It was from Carla, my old team lead from a job I left when Mom got sick. "Just checking in," she wrote. "You brought something special to the team. Hope you're doing well." I reread it 3 times. Outside of this family, I was respected, valued, missed. What if their version of me wasn't the truth? I grabbed my laptop, pulled up my bank accounts, old 401k, and legal docs I'd filed years ago. I wasn't broke. I wasn't helpless. I'd just been told I was. A flicker of something stirred in me, not anger. Not yet. But power. Quiet, steady power. They thought I was a footnote. A blank space in the family story. But funny thing about trust funds, sometimes they surprise you. The drive home that night felt longer than usual. I was tired, but not the kind of tired you cure with sleep. It was more like a weight pressing behind my eyes, tugging at the corners of my mouth. My body was upright behind the wheel, but my mind was back at that dinner, Dad's words echoing louder than the radio. "You'll never get it together, will you?" I'd heard worse, but that one stuck. Maybe because it was said in front of everyone. Maybe because no one flinched. Rain tapped the windshield in a soft, lazy rhythm. The kind of rain that doesn't demand attention but seeps into your bones. I flicked on the wipers, glanced at my phone at a red light, missed call from Mom. No voicemail. Figures. The highway curved gently ahead, trees crowding close on both sides. A country song hummed through the speakers, something about second chances and running out of time. I almost laughed. I didn't even remember having a first. Then, light. Blinding white light. A horn. The shriek of metal bending against metal. And silence. I came to with a dry tongue and the beeping of machines. My eyes struggled to adjust to the fluorescent buzz above. A nurse in scrubs adjusted something near my bed. My wrist was bandaged. My ribs ached with every shallow breath. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a croak. The doctor told me I was lucky. A semi sideswiped you on a curve. Your car's totaled, but you're here. That's what matters. Lucky. Dad and Greg showed up the next day. Greg leaned against the wall, arms crossed like he was bored. Dad stood at the foot of the bed, looked me over once, then said, "You always find trouble, don't you?" Inez's cousin, Trudy, was my nurse on shift. She leaned in when they left. Funny thing. Truck driver never checked in. Just vanished. Didn't even call it in. Weird, right? I nodded, but something inside me twisted. That flash of light. That curve. It didn't feel random. Later, when they brought me my things, what was left of them, a folded paper slipped from the mess in my ruined purse. It was water damaged, but the logo on top was clear, our family's lawyer's office. I unfolded it carefully. It was the estate document. The same one they claimed was just logistics. My name was there. Or had been. It was scratched out. Not printed, but in pen. Replaced with someone else's. That handwriting, I knew it. Emery's. Greg's son. Sharp, cocky strokes. Sloppy but deliberate. I stared at that page for a long time. Not because I didn't believe it. But because I did. They didn't forget me. They erased me. That kind of cruelty doesn't scream. It whispers. It deletes. It replaces. The bruises faded over the next week, but the feeling of being disposable didn't. When the hospital therapist asked if I had family support, I said yes. She nodded, but I knew she saw through it. My silence said more than words ever could. Maybe survival wasn't just luck. Maybe it was a message. Grandma used to say, God whispers before he shouts. I didn't know if I believed in that anymore, but something had gotten my attention. The nurse brought me a pen and a small notepad. I started writing names. Not out of rage, but clarity. Each one had something to gain. Each one had a reason to want me gone. Greg. Dad. Donna. Even Emery's. By the time I was discharged, I had a plan. Not a full one, but the bones of something sharp. Greg offered to help get me home. Said he'd handle things if I was still foggy from meds. I smiled. Told him I'd called a cab. Instead, I walked across the street and bought a car. Not new. Not flashy. But mine. Paid in cash. Later that afternoon, I called Gideon Fallow, our family lawyer. Pretended I was checking in about a friend's estate. Casual. Friendly. He hesitated for just a breath too long when I mentioned the document. That copy. It wasn't supposed to be outside our office, he said. That's all I needed. People had been underestimating me for 40 years. I let them. It was easier than fighting. Not anymore. That night, as I sat in my new old car outside the drugstore, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. Text, accidents aren't always accidents. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. It had been a quiet week since I left the hospital, or at least that's what I told people who asked. The truth was, quiet didn't mean peaceful, it meant empty. I was still moving slower than I used to, but my head was sharper than it had been in years. Some things, it seemed, only woke up after you'd been broken. That evening, I took a short walk around the block. The air carried that faint Alabama dampness, heavy with honeysuckle and the sound of distant dogs. When I came back home, something caught my eye, an envelope lying halfway under the front door. Cream paper, edges yellowed, sealed with wax. My heart stuttered when I saw the handwriting. It was hers. Grandma Judith's cursive, elegant, strong, familiar. The front read, to Cressida, for your eyes only. I just stood there for a while, holding it, afraid to open it. That woman had been the only one in my family who looked at me without judgment. If she was reaching out from the grave, what could it possibly be to say? I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one she used to polish every Saturday, and ran my thumb along the seal. The wax cracked softly. Inside was one letter, neatly folded, the paper thin from age. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. My dear Cressida, it began. If this reaches you, then something went wrong sooner than I hoped. There are truths in this family buried deeper than the roots on our land, and I fear they'll rot us from within. Her words pulled me into her voice, the calm tone she used when she wanted me to really listen. She wrote about the tension before she passed, how her last months were full of strange visitors and hushed calls. She said she'd grown uneasy about the will, that someone had made changes she never agreed to. She said I was supposed to inherit the main estate. That it had always been her wish. Then she wrote about overhearing Soraya and Blaze, my aunt and uncle, talking in the sunroom. About how they wanted me out of the picture, that I was too soft to fight. Grandma had been sick then, too weak to confront them, but she didn't stay quiet. She'd sent copies of documents to her lawyer and her housekeeper for safekeeping. Her final lines were steady, almost loving, don't let the world tell you who you are. Inheritance means nothing if you lose your sense of self first. I sat there a long time, the letter heavy in my lap. My first thought was denial. Grandma must have been confused. Maybe she imagined it. But then, flashes of memory came, small, sharp things I'd ignored. Dad saying, Judith's mind slipping. Donna whispering that I'd misheard something. The time a letter went missing from my mailbox and everyone swore it never existed. They hadn't just ignored me. They'd shaped the world so that I questioned myself. I felt a sharp ache crawl up my throat. I crumpled the letter and threw it across the table. It hit the wall and slid to the floor. I told myself I was done, then I went and picked it up, smoothing the paper out and taping the torn edge back together like an apology. That's when I realized it, my childhood wasn't just lonely. It was orchestrated. The next morning, I called Gideon again, pretending to have a legal question for a friend. He sighed, said he was busy, then lowered his voice. Cressida, I shouldn't say this, but there are two versions of your grandmother's will. One signed, one forged. The unsigned one names Emery's. The handwriting doesn't match hers. He gave me a name, Margot Templeton. A retired notary who used to handle the family paperwork. By nightfall, I'd already packed a small bag, checked the gas in my car, and bought a small voice recorder from the drugstore. My first step toward the truth wasn't anger, it was calculation. Cold, clear, necessary. But before I could leave, there was a knock on the door. Soraya stood there, smiling that slow, sugar-sweet smile she'd mastered long ago. She carried a pot of soup, said she'd been worried after the accident. Her eyes drifted across the room like she was scanning for something. I thought I'd stop by, check on you, she said. You gave us quite a scare. I played along. I'm healing fine. Just taking it slow. We sat in the living room. She talked about family, about forgiveness, about how life's too short to hold grudges. Then she asked, too casually, you haven't come across anything of your grandmother's lately, have you? No, I said, letting my voice stay steady. Why? Oh, nothing, she smiled. Just some things are better left buried, Cressida. That line stuck to me like tar. When she left, the house felt colder. I went to my bedroom, meaning to lie down, but then I noticed it. The jewelry box on my dresser. Grandma's. The lock had been broken. They'd been here. And they were still watching. I walked into Dad's old study without knocking. The door stood slightly ajar, its dark wood worn from years of use, its brass knob polished but tarnished. I didn't bother closing it behind me. I carried a manila folder Gideon had sent over, thin black letters reading Amended Trust, Marlowe Family. My heart skipped. This room, once off limits to me, now felt like home turf. Books on legacy and inheritance lined the shelves, their spines thick with promise, none ever meant for me. I opened the folder and froze. Just a week after Grandma's death, someone had signed this document. Dad told me it was just paperwork, and I believed him, because I wanted to believe. This moment shattered that hope. I felt betrayal sharp, cold, but with it came something else. Resolve. They weren't foolish. They were strategic. The quote echoed in my mind, the best lie is the one they believe themselves. Late into the evening I pored over spreadsheets and statements. Bank numbers don't lie. 7 years ago, a transfer of $2.3 million moved from the trust into a shell account. No one told me. I remembered hushed voices at family dinners, she's out of the loop, she won't understand. Now I sat in the study with my laptop open, calculator running, asking, how many signs did I miss? I shot Gideon an email, I want every document, every signature. His reply arrived, This is bigger than your father's estate. A coil of trigger in my chest. Emotion morphed into action. The room's calm turned charged. 2 days later, Soraya dropped by unannounced. Lunch was her excuse. I agreed, on my terms. At the table, pressed tea and a polite smile wrapped in hidden steel. She said, "You've always been too soft, Cressida," with kindness that felt criminal. I stayed silent. I opened the folder, slid it across the table. She slumped, just a fraction. "You don't know half the backroom deals," she said. I took a breath. The balance shifted, no longer reacting, I was dictating. My calm masked the storm. At the end I said quietly, "Let's speak in terms you understand, litigation." That night at home I dug through old home videos, Christmases when I stood in corners, filtered out of group shots, replaced by that vacant gap everyone pretended not to see. On the company website I found old leadership frames, Soraya front and center, my name nowhere to be found. It hit me, every smile, every photo, every omission, someone curated my invisibility. I drafted a spreadsheet on my desk beside the study lamp, date, Grandma's death. Date, document amended. Date, first major transfer. I whispered into the lamp's glow, "You built a house of mirrors. I'll smash the glass." My phone pinged. "Gideon, they've locked the trust documents offline." The game was changing. My mind flagged a choice, retreat into silence or rise into truth. Grandma's voice floated back, "You don't owe anyone your light." I chose to fight, not for revenge, but for myself. I locked the study door behind me, took the silk scarf Grandma left me, embroidered with her initials, put it around my neck. A symbol beyond money. I opened an old notebook, I wrote one sentence, "Start the process." No more silent membership in someone else's legacy. On my screen a news alert flashed, Marlowe Family Foundation audit launched. I swallowed. They thought they buried the truth. They never saw me digging. We gathered in the sitting room at the estate under the weight of Sunday shadows. The curtains were drawn, the sky outside gray, like an old bruise no one wanted to talk about. Soraya sat at the head of the long table, Emery's across from her, and Dad in the corner. Inez hovered near the window, silent. I walked in, set my bag gently on the chair, and sat facing them all. Soraya began, "We're here to get on the same page, Cressida." Her words were calm, but they carried the hush of something else. The agenda shifted quickly to restructuring assets and a suggestion, soft as velvet, about signing a non-disclosure agreement. I felt the air fold around me. I didn't argue. I listened. My mind catalogued every glance, every half-smile. Discomfort would no longer keep me down. That paper they handed me was thin, but heavy with meaning. I slid open the flap of the manila envelope and found what looked like peace wrapped in surrender. Documents relinquishing any claim I had to the trust. For the sake of family harmony, it read. My lips pressed together. I glanced at Soraya. She said quietly, "You were never interested in this world anyway." I asked, "Is peace giving up, or is it something else?" She nodded, as though expecting my question. But I didn't sign. I asked for time to think. I held the paper like a trap. I carried it home. Alone, I felt my anger sharpen, not wild, but precise. I opened the legal folder again on my laptop, did the work I should have done years ago. The phrase from Grandma's letter echoed, "Inheritance means nothing if you lose your sense of self first." I realized I had almost signed away not just money but my name. Later, under early evening light, I escorted Emery's to his car. His door clicked shut and I leaned against my own vehicle. He cleared his throat. Funny how silence sounds different when someone's finally listening, I said. His smile stumbled for just a moment. He glanced past me, past the darkened lawn of the estate, then returned his gaze. You don't want to go to war with your own blood, he said. I nodded. Then don't bleed me, I replied. The words hung between us like glass shards. He closed the car door. I walked away with no backward glance. Back at my apartment, I met with Gideon, quiet, off the record. He warned of secrets, smear campaigns, legal backlashes. I laid on the table, the amended trust doc. Grandma's letter. The spreadsheet showing transfers. Gideon's eyes were flat when he said, what they did might be criminal. But it's definitely unethical. I saw in his face that I wasn't alone. We began constructing evidence, not loud headlines yet, but the first blueprint of truth. I left his office with a feeling I hadn't had in years, quiet empowerment. That night, I sat at my desk, opened a USB drive and compiled what I'd gathered, documents, letters, spreadsheets. I composed an email to the State Bar. Another to a media contact. My fingers hovered over upload longer than I expected. Then I hit send. I leaned back. The tug of my old self, the one who waited for someone to notice, was quiet. This version of me didn't wait. A black SUV idled outside my building. No one stepped out. It waited. I didn't flinch. I watched. The late summer air in Charlottesville felt different that evening, like change packed itself into the humidity and waited. I sat at my kitchen table with 2 coffee mugs in front of me, one half filled and cold, the other drained and forgotten. My startup pinged again, subject, funds transferred. A major investor. Gratitude in one line. Yet the press release from the family company mentioned everything but me. My lips pressed. Grandma's voice echoed in my mind, the whisper before the roar matters most. I typed something tentative. I erased. I froze. No more waiting. I drew a line under half a decade's worth of silence and stepped across it. In the living room, I laid out files from the USB I compiled with Gideon. Sheets of dates, signatures, transfers, rows and rows of omissions. I remembered being proud when I helped build that company's stockroom in my 20s, unaware I was building the foundation so someone else could lock the door behind me. The company website didn't list my name anywhere. Minutes from board meetings had blank lines where my signature should have been. I wrapped Grandma's silk scarf around my wrist. It wasn't just a comfort now, it was proof. Betrayal had a shape. I felt momentum gathering beneath my ribs. The next morning I called Soraya. Let's meet at the estate, 10 a.m., I said. I didn't ask. I declared. Her silence answered the question. I pulled evidence into a small briefcase. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror beside the door, someone I didn't fully know, but someone I trusted. The black SUV that had hovered outside my apartment earlier idled at the curb again. I walked past it intentionally, nodded once to the driver, and climbed into my car. The windows were down, the wind made my hair whip around, clean, fierce. Charlottesville Highway stretched before me. For once I didn't look away from the road. At the estate sitting room, the light was flat midday. Soraya, Emery's and Dad were already gathered. Gideon sat beside me. I placed the printed documents, printed, bound, undeniable, onto the table. It was quiet for the longest moment. Then Soraya leaned forward, used that smile, sweet, thin. You asked me to sign away your rights, I said. I refused. Now you should know why. Emery's sharpened his gaze. Dad shifted in his chair, crossed his arms. Gideon said, the State Bar will review this paperwork. Your signatures will be scrutinized. My heart raced, but my face stayed calm. The front door opened behind us. A news cameraman stepped in unannounced. The room jolted. I slanted a look at Soraya. Power had shifted. I let it sit. Later that night I returned home under a sky that promised rain and possibility. I removed the family portrait from the wall, folded it carefully, replaced it with the scarf in a frame. I opened my laptop, drafted the vision statement for my business, built by me, for the overlooked. I sent the USB link to the reporter I trusted. I called Inez. Meet me tomorrow. I've got something for you, I said. Her voice cracked with relief I hadn't expected. Outside my window the black SUV waited again, its engine low, lights off. I watched it, thought of nights I spent feeling watched but invisible. Tonight I felt both seen and ready. The storm had begun. I stepped into the conference room with my evidence folder in hand. The long table loomed like it had swallowed years of decisions I was never part of. Soraya occupied the head seat, Dad to her left, Emery's to her right. I placed the folder squarely in front of me and took a breath. I'll no longer sit here as an option. I've come to claim my seat. My voice did not tremble. Soraya's eyes narrowed. Dad leaned back in his chair. Emery's didn't make a sound. I opened the folder and set the first documents ahead of them, notarized statements, signatures, amendments, they couldn't be ignored. Everyone shivered at the silent weight of truth. My body felt different, lighter, though the room had grown heavier. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. Later, Gideon handed me a sealed envelope marked Audit Report, Marlowe Family Trust. My fingers hovered before I opened it. On the front page, in crisp text I hadn't seen attached to my name in years, primary beneficiary, Cressida Marlowe. The signature below matched Grandma's cursive. Dad frowned. Soraya shifted toward her edge of power. I quoted, "Truth doesn't care who it offends." The silence was sharp. Emery's voice cut through, "This is ridiculous, why now?" I didn't hesitate. Because I stopped waiting for your permission. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. The room shifted. The old guard realized I wasn't their understudy, I was their reckoning. Dad stood, voice rigid and cold. "You've always been the family's shame, Cressida." Freeze. That sentence slammed into me like ice. Soraya's smirk flashed. Emery's turned away. I felt the weight of every conversation, every omitted mention, every invisible birthday. My hands tightened around the silk scarf Grandma left me, now a symbol, not a keepsake. I didn't tremble. I said softly, "Maybe. But I'm the one standing now." The words landed before the moment wrapped back around. I could feel my voice echo in the hush. Then I turned the room's light toward them. I projected recordings, voice files, hidden videos, Blaze and Soraya speaking about trust amendments, Inez's recollection of papers gone missing. Faces flickered onto the screen and the air cracked. Soraya leaned forward. "You can't do this. Publicly." I smiled. "Watch me." Outside, gala guests arrived, murmurs drifting in from the lawn. The boardroom's power shifted from them to me. Emery's looked furious. Dad sat silent, undone. Gideon placed a gentle hand on the folder I hadn't let go of. Control was changing hands. That night, the estate lawn glowed under soft lights. I walked through the gathering crowd, press flashes flickering like broken promises. I felt both subject and witness. I placed the scarf around my neck where it showed clearly. I pulled out my phone and recorded a short message. This isn't a fight for money. It's a fight for me. I sent it live to investor contacts I'd been building. I saw Emery standing at a window, astonished. I heard camera shutters. And then news alert buzzed. Marlowe Family Foundation faces serious charges. A chill slid through my spine. The board thought they held all the pieces. They never saw my move. The lawn of the estate felt electric under the floodlights. Cameras flashed one after another. People in tuxedos and gowns chattered about the legacy celebration, not realizing the real broadcast hadn't started yet. I walked among the guests like I was part of the show, because I was. When I stepped to the microphone, I heard the soft hum of expectation. The banner above read Marlowe Family Legacy Night. I cleared my throat. Tonight isn't about the legacy you chose for me, it's about the legacy I choose for myself. The words rolled out steady. Soraya's smile flickered. Dad looked away. For the first time they saw the person they thought was silent. I felt calm, not brave, just clear. This moment was mine. The screen behind me flickered to life. Gideon held the remote at my side. I pressed play. My grandmother Judith's face filled the screen. Her voice steady, even after all these years. She spoke my name, called me her true heir. The audience shifted. Guests exchanged looks. Board members froze. Emery's leaned forward. My vision narrowed to her words, my only true heir is Cressida. The air cracked. Soraya rose, her posture defensive. Dad's expression hardened. I let the video play out, no interrupting. My name in black and white, unshakable. I said aloud, truth doesn't care who it offends. Silence echoed. Emery's muttered, why now? I answered, because I stopped waiting for your permission. The power in the room changed hands. Reporters surged forward. Flashes turned into tweeting phones. The hashtag appeared, Marlowe reveal. My pulse raced. Triumph and vulnerability lived together in that moment. I looked through the crowd and saw Inez standing quietly, nodding. That one look steadied me. Soraya came close, voice tight, you think this changes everything? I stepped aside, softly, it changes what I accept. Behind us, the foundation board stirred, whispers igniting like sparklers. I watched guests move, cameras click, and realized the truth had turned into a story. This was no longer private. It was public. The gathering ended but the night did not. The lawn emptied, lights dimmed. I walked alone toward my car, the scarf around my neck swaying in the breeze. My phone buzzed, news alert, Marlowe Family Foundation under federal investigation. I paused under the stars. The scarf felt heavy around my neck, in the best way. I understood now, winning the fight didn't heal everything, but it made the wounds mine. Relief, loss, hope, all tangled together. I whispered to the night air, this is real now. In the morning there were emails. Investor offers. Recognition, not because of the name, but because of me. I opened my inbox slowly. My mom hadn't called. Dad hadn't apologized. I realized acceptance has its own timeline, and no one else can give it to you. I sat in my new office, window looking toward the estate I once dreamed to join. Grandma's words drifted back, your light is your own. I leaned back. Battles remained, legal, emotional, financial. But for now, I rested in this truth, I wasn't invisible anymore. My phone pinged. Late night message, you're about to become the face of a movement. I stared at it. The game changed. They saw me. But I'm just getting started. I've moved to a cabin by a quiet lake in Vermont. Early morning, I sit with coffee in my hands and the porch silent except for the wind through pine. I left the estate behind, not out of fear, but out of choice. I don't escape. I create distance so I can listen. I pull out Grandma Judith's journal each day. Her handwritten lines about kindness, legacy, and truth read differently now. I reflect on what happened, the betrayal, the hidden trust, the fight, the public truth. I am no longer reacting to it. I am deciding. Peace isn't loud. It comes from inside when you stop pretending you don't remember. I take up routines that feel simple but real. I plant herbs on the deck, walk forest trails, journal by the firelight. Outside, the world may be whisper quiet. Inside, I finally hear myself. The phone still pings with offers, investors, messages, attention, but I reply only when I choose. Gideon dropped by last week. He looked at me and said, "You look lighter." I told him, "I'm just less burdened." Some letters come now from strangers, people who saw the gala, who say they felt seen. I smile at that. Healing is layered. It doesn't shout. It moves in between routines and choices. I wrote a letter to my mother. Not to restart things, but to release them. I told her, "You don't have to love me for me to be whole." But I needed to say I forgive you. I didn't send it. I filed it in a drawer and let it rest with my truth. I heard through Inez that Dad left the foundation board. Soraya is under investigation. I don't feel triumph, just closure. Some bridges don't need crossing again. Burning them only leaves smoke. I choose calm distance. I'd rather rebuild than retaliate. Then I planted a new seed. I launched the Lighthouse Legacy Scholarship in Grandma's name, helping young women in tech who were overlooked. Not to prove I'm more than my family, but because I know what it was like to get overlooked. Emery sent me a message, "You're doing more with the money than any of them ever could." I replied, because I knew what it was like to be given nothing. I chose mentors, hired women who weren't seen, because legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you plant and tend. Evening comes, the lake soft under the fading sun. I sit on the porch and whisper Grandma's final line, "Let them call you what they want. What matters is what you answer to." I'm no longer the girl called useless. I'm no longer the woman fighting only to prove someone wrong. I'm just me, measured and steady. I watch that sun drop behind the tree-line, and I breathe. My phone buzzes late into the night. Unknown sender, I have information about Judith's estate and your uncle. I lean back, look at the stars, and smile quietly. One door closed. Another creaked open behind me. I'm ready.